This time, we will discuss a shocking corruption case from Vietnam. This case involves a Vietnamese billionaire named Truong My Lan, who is currently in the public spotlight. The amount of money allegedly embezzled by her reaches tens of billions of dollars. Before discussing her case, let's get to know more about this billionaire's profile. Truong My Lan, born on October 13, 1956 in Saigon, South Vietnam. She comes from a family of Teochew descent, a tribe originating from Gezhou village, Shantou, Guangdong, China. Although this case occurred in Vietnam, Truong is an immigrant from China. According to several sources, Truong My Lan initially sold accessories in a market in District 5, Ho Chi Minh City. In 1992, Truong and her family founded a company named Van Tin Phat, VTP. When the Vietnamese economy began to liberalize and open to foreign companies, initially, VTP was engaged in trade, restaurants, and hotels. However, over time, VTP began to venture into investment business and development of the real estate sector, including luxury housing. The company grew rapidly after entering the real estate sector, mainly because it has connections with the political elite in Vietnam. Within a few years, Truong and VTP managed to acquire several properties in Vietnam, including in the Nguyen Hue Boulevard area, one of the most expensive areas in Asia. Truong then established VPT Group Holdings with an initial capital of 6 trillion dong, or about $235.6 million, and she is the largest shareholder with 80% shares, or equivalent to 4.8 trillion dong, or about $188.4 million. VTP owns two major properties, namely in Dong Commercial Hotel and luxury apartment Sherwood Residence, where Truong has a unit that she uses as a residence. In addition, VTP also has several large projects such as Bonneville Land Housing, Sterling Residence, Lambert Residence, Thuan Kieu Plaza, Café Central Nguyen Hue, Hugi Restaurant, and Duc Bao Restaurant. In Ho Chi Minh City, Truong is known as the Queen of Large Property Projects because her projects are in many prime urban locations, including Saigon Times Square, VTP Office Building, Duxton Hotel, and Union Square. She also once bought Thuan Kieu Plaza Tower, which has an area of 10,000 square meters and is located in the middle of District 5. The Thuan Kieu Plaza project was completed in 1998, but then abandoned and finally bought and continued by Truong. Truong's VTP company has more than 1,000 subsidiaries, both in Vietnam and abroad, and all are under Truong's control. Truong is also known to own a luxury villa in District 3, Ho Chi Minh City, which has an area of almost 3,000 square meters. The main part of Truong My Lan's villa has an area of 990 square meters with 2 rooms inside. This luxury villa has 3 entrances, 2 on Vo Van Tan Street and 1 on Huyen Tan Quan Street. Although surrounded by a boundary wall, ironically, the area around the villa looks slum because it is in a district inhabited by many poor people. Initially, this villa was owned by Dang Kim Khai and Nguyen Kim Sa Dang. However, when property prices in Vietnam skyrocketed, they decided to sell the villa for $44.9 million. Truong, who has a lot of money, bought the villa without thinking twice. In 2015, Truong, through the joint company Minerva, bought this villa for $35 million. After the purchase, she renovated the villa on a large scale until it looked very luxurious. Truong has a husband named Chu Nap Ky, a businessman who owns many real estate businesses in Vietnam and abroad. They have 2 daughters, Chu Dui Hang, born in 1994, and Jo Dui Phan, born in 1995. Both of their children also became business people, following in their parents' footsteps. One of Truong's children, Chu Dui Hang, at the age of 22, has already taken over a company named ZH Hospitality Group and serves as the president of the company. ZH Hospitality Group operates in the food sector and supplies food to wealthy people in Vietnam and other countries such as Korea, Italy, and Thailand. In addition, Truong's other child, Jo Dui Phan, also owns as much as 70% of the shares in a joint company owned by VTP, which was established at the end of October 2022 under the name Thuan True Sponsoring Joint Stock Company. Here we already know the background of Truong and her wealthy family and children. Now we enter into the discussion of Truong's case that makes her have to face the death penalty. Since 2011, Truong has owned shares in several banks, including Saigon Commercial JSC, then in Vietnam Tin Nha, and also in Dinh Nhot. When Truong My Lan bought shares in several banks, she tried to hide her identity by using other people's names. Not only Truong, who owns shares in the bank, but several family members were also placed in important positions in the bank. On January 1, 2012, Truong merged the three banks into Saigon Commercial Bank, SCB. Since then, SCB has been used as a financial company to fund VTP's business. The customer's money is circulated by Truong for her business. In 2022, SCB has a basic capital of more than 15 trillion Truong, or equivalent to $588.9 million US. Although Truong does not have direct executive power in SCB, she is the largest shareholder with 91.5% shares. Truong recruits people who have a financial and banking background to help her commit many frauds in the bank. These people were sent by her to become important officials in SCB. Based on the credit institution law in Vietnam, SCB is allowed to accept deposits from individuals and business entities to provide loans to parties who want to borrow money. However, what happened is that Truong's SCB bank did not lend the customers money to people who wanted credit, but instead lent it entirely to Truong. Truong directed the SCB leadership to coordinate with VTP officials to withdraw bank money in the form of disbursement of fake loan applications. So, as if there were creditors or people who wanted to borrow money there. In fact, the money was engineered, and Truong herself borrowed the money. From 2012 to 2022, SCB has lent and channeled credit to 1336 customers, even though all of it is fictitious. In the data, 1336 customers consist of 710 individuals and 656 organizations or companies. For her personal needs, Truong also took as many as 2,500 loans, and the total disbursement from the customers' funds in the three banks that were merged into one, namely SCB, reached 1 quadrillion Truong. This figure is equivalent to 10.7% of Vietnam's GDP in 2023, which is $409 billion US. After borrowing all of that, Truong then created a drama as if there was a bad credit. In 2022, there were as many as 875 of Truong's customers who had debts of more than $26.6 billion US at SCB, and all were registered as bad credit. To deceive the central bank, Truong asked the leaders at SCB to establish 3 units with loan functions at its headquarters since 2020. The disbursed money did not directly enter Truong's personal account, but the 3 units worked to channel loans to Truong. To legalize withdrawals and avoid tracking, she established a fictitious company in Vietnam and abroad to apply for loans to SCB. When it was due and Truong could not pay all her loans, she then made a fake loan application. Truong tried to bribe several government officials, including a former central official who is now serving a life sentence for accepting a bribe of $5.2 million US. The actions carried out by Truong My Lan resulted in a loss of $27 billion US. That's just the loss on bribes, not including other losses. So how did Truong's actions start to unfold? Now we enter the discussion of Truong's capture. Truong's actions began to unfold when the bank she formed and merged from 3 into 1, namely SCB, suddenly went bankrupt in 2022. The Vietnamese government then stepped in to investigate the bankruptcy of SCB. From the investigation, many strange transactions were found from the loans given by SCB to companies with unclear origins. Each of that money only stopped briefly at the company, and the rest flowed directly into Truong's personal pocket. At that time, the Vietnamese government began to target Truong. Based on a report from the BBC, the police came to Truong's house on October 7, 2022, around 1 a.m. local time, and the arrest became very sensational in Vietnam. Truong was arrested along with 80 other people, including her husband, Chu Nap Ky, and her nephew, Truong Hue Van, who served as CEO of VTP. There are also 5 people who are fugitives from the police, including former SCB officials. Their detention was handled by different institutions, such as the Ministry of Public Security, the Ministry of National Defense, and the National Ministry. The court scheduled a trial for Truong's case from March 5, 2024 until April 29, 2024. Truong and 85 others were charged with embezzling property, violating banking operational regulations, giving bribes, receiving bribes, exploiting positions and powers when committing criminal acts, and being irresponsible, thus creating serious impact and abusing public trust. Specifically, Truong was charged with 3 crimes: embezzlement of property, violation of banking activity regulations, and bribery. However, Truong denied all the charges and blamed the mistakes on her subordinates. Truong tried to wash her hands by looking for a scapegoat, namely her employees. However, this did not work because the employees moved according to Truong's orders. In a trial consisting of 3 jurors and 2 judges, all defenses given by Truong were rejected, and finally, Truong was sentenced to death. According to the judges, what Truong did has lowered public trust in the leadership of the Communist Party and the state. The amount of money embezzled by Truong is said to be the largest corruption in Southeast Asian history. Meanwhile, Truong's nephew, named Truong Hugh Van, was sentenced to 17 years in prison. Her husband, Chu Nap Ki, was charged as the creator of a fake loan application to withdraw money from SCB, so he was sentenced to 9 years in prison.